All right, get ready because today we're going deep on a topic I think we've all thought about, weight loss. But we're not talking about those crash diets or crazy workouts. Nope. Today we're looking for the secrets to effortless weight loss. Could it really be that easy? Well, let's see what our sources have to say.
That's a pretty intriguing idea, isn't it? Losing weight without feeling like you're constantly battling yourself.
Exactly. We've got advice from May Simpkin. She's a registered nutritionist, and some really interesting insights from a holistic doctor, Dr. Sten Ekberg. Oh, and we've also got a wellness clinic's perspective, a blog post by James Clear. He's all about simple living. And even, well, let's just say some unfiltered wisdom from a random internet commenter. That's quite a range of perspectives, right?
It is, and that's what I think makes this deep dive so fascinating. We're not just talking about the science behind weight loss, but also the psychology, the habits, even the things in our environment that can make a difference.
I like that. So let's start with Dr. Ekberg. He kind of throws down a pretty bold statement right away. He says that traditional diets just don't work. In fact, they might be doing more harm than good.
Yeah.
I've definitely been down that road. Restriction and guilt, it never seems to last.
He makes a really compelling point about the negative psychological impact of constantly feeling like you're failing. Dr. Ekberg argues that instead of these short-term battles with diets, we should focus on understanding our body's natural systems and working with them, not against them.
That makes sense. So where do we even begin with that?
Well, Dr. Ekberg really highlights hormones. He talks about how crucial they are in weight regulation. In fact, he talks about 4 key hormones: insulin, cortisol, leptin, and growth hormone.
Okay.
These hormones, these little chemical messengers, are always sending signals to our body that impact our hunger, our metabolism, even how our body stores fat.
Okay, I'm definitely intrigued. But I'm also a little intimidated by hormones. That always felt like, I don't know, a tangled web to me. Well, let's untangle it together. Think of it this way. When your hormones are balanced, losing weight can feel almost effortless. But when they're out of whack, it's like trying to swim upstream. You're constantly fighting against your body's natural signals.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. So what throws those hormones off balance?
So many things. But one of the biggest culprits is our modern diet. The processed foods, sugary drinks, even chronic stress, they can create this hormonal storm that makes it incredibly hard to lose weight.
I see where he's going with this. Dr. Ekberg talks a lot about how processed foods have completely distorted our perception of what's normal to eat. He even uses this pretty interesting analogy. He compares humans to polar bears and penguins.
It's a brilliant way to, make us question our assumptions. Think about it. A polar bear thrives on a high-fat, low-carb diet, while a penguin basically feasts on fish. What we think is extreme for one species is completely natural for another.
So what we think of as a quote-unquote normal diet for humans might actually be throwing our own systems out of whack. Exactly. And this is where it gets really interesting, because this ties directly back to those hormones we were talking about. For example, insulin. You know how insulin helps your cells use sugar for energy?
Yeah, I always think about it like a key that unlocks the door to let the sugar in.
Perfect analogy. Now imagine those locks getting rusty. That's kind of what happens with insulin resistance. That key doesn't work as well, so sugar builds up in your bloodstream instead of fueling your body. And guess what contributes to insulin resistance? You guessed it. Those processed foods and sugary drinks that Dr. Ekberg was warning us about.
Okay, that definitely makes that whole hormone imbalance thing a lot more concrete. So basically, if we want to lose weight effortlessly, we need to get these hormonal messengers back on our side.
Precisely. And that all starts with understanding what truly nourishes our bodies and what throws those systems off balance.
Less processed food and more real whole foods. That sounds pretty familiar. But how do we actually translate that into, something actionable?
Yeah.
Luckily, our registered nutritionist, May Simpkin, she has some great practical tips.
She really emphasizes planning. When we're tired and hungry, we're much more likely to reach for those quick, processed options. But if we have healthy meals and snacks already prepped and ready to go, it's much easier to make good choices.
No more staring blankly into the fridge, wondering what to eat.
Exactly.
I can definitely relate to that.
Simpkin also stresses vegetables. Lots of them. In fact, she recommends aiming for 7 portions a day.
7. Wow, I think I might need to step up my veggie game.
It might sound like a lot, but there are tons of ways to get them in. Think smoothies, stir fries, omelets, Get creative.
Good point.
Yeah.
What else does she recommend?
Well, she talks about being mindful of our carb intake, especially the refined kind. Remember that insulin spike we talked about earlier? Refined carbs can really send our blood sugar on a roller coaster ride, and that can lead to cravings and overeating.
Makes sense. And speaking of cravings, Simkin also recommends cutting back on snacking. She suggests focusing on feeling really satisfied after meals, so we're less likely to reach for those between meal munchies.
And to help with that feeling of fullness, Simkin suggests making sure every meal includes a good source of protein. It keeps you feeling full and helps stabilize those blood sugar levels.
Okay, so we're planning ahead, loading up on veggies, watching those carbs, and being mindful of snacking. This is starting to feel like a real plan.
It's all about making gradual, sustainable changes that work with your body, not against it. And speaking of working with your body, Simkin also has some really interesting advice about tuning into its signals.
Oh, like actually listening to what our body's trying to tell us.
Exactly. It's about recognizing true hunger versus, emotional eating, paying attention to those fullness cues, and even just eating slowly enough so your brain can actually register that you're satisfied. It's about developing a more mindful relationship with food.
That makes a lot of sense, but it's so easy in our, fast-paced world to just, shovel food in without really thinking about it.
It takes practice, but it's definitely a skill worth cultivating. Simkin also talks about moving our bodies regularly, and it doesn't have to be anything intense. Even a brisk walk every day can make a difference.
So we're not talking about those grueling workouts, just getting our bodies moving in ways that feel good.
Exactly. It's about finding activities that you actually enjoy and incorporating them into your routine.
All right, so we've got nutrition, mindfulness, and movement covered. Anything else?
She has a couple other interesting tips. She suggests eating dinner as early as possible and then, closing the kitchen for the night. It kind of aligns with that concept of intermittent fasting that Dr. Ekberg talked about, giving your body a longer break from digestion.
Interesting. No more late-night snacking raids on the fridge.
And lastly, she recommends weighing yourself daily. Now, this one can be a bit controversial.
I can see how that could become an obsession for some people.
Absolutely. It's just a tool.
Yeah.
It's not the be-all and end-all. It's about tracking trends and noticing how your body responds to different choices, not getting fixated on a specific number.
That's a good point. Wow, we covered a lot of ground with Simkin's advice. But we've got even more to explore, including some, shall we say, rather unconventional wisdom from our internet commenter friend. We'll dive into that in part 2 of our deep dive.
I'm looking forward to seeing what Pasted Text has to say. It's always good to, challenge our assumptions and consider different perspectives.
Exactly. Stay tuned for more effortless weight loss insights. Okay, we're back, ready to dive into some more of those effortless weight loss strategies. It's kind of funny, we've been talking about all these registered nutritionists and doctors, but sometimes those really surprising insights come from the most unexpected places.
You're talking about Pasted Text, our internet commenter with a penchant for blunt advice.
The one and only. And you know what? Some of their tips actually do align with what we were just talking about, especially when it comes to intermittent fasting.
Right. It just goes to show you that wisdom can be found in the most unlikely corners of the internet. Pasted Text suggests skipping breakfast altogether and instead having that first meal around 1 p.m.
Wow, that's a pretty bold move. But it does tie into that whole extending the overnight fasting period, which, both Dr. Ekberg and May Simkin mentioned that.
Exactly. By giving our digestive system a longer break, we might be able to boost those fat-burning hormones and regulate our appetite more effectively.
Makes sense. Pasted Text also recommends having a larger meal in the late afternoon when our metabolism is supposedly more active. So front-loading our calories for the day.
It's an interesting concept, and it might not work for everyone, but some people do find that this type of eating pattern helps them feel more energized and less hungry throughout the day.
I could see how that might take some getting used to. They're also pretty adamant about cutting out snacks and calorie-laden drinks.
Right, and that makes a lot of sense. Snacking can keep those insulin levels elevated, and it can disrupt our natural hunger cues. And sugary drinks, they're basically just empty calories that contribute to weight gain and those hormonal imbalances we talked about.
Yeah, for sure. They also chime in on the importance of walking, aiming for 10,000 steps a day, which seems to be a pretty popular fitness goal these days.
It's a pretty simple yet effective way to incorporate more movement into our day. and it doesn't require any special equipment or a gym membership.
Plus, getting out in the fresh air can be so good for our mood and our stress levels, right?
Absolutely. And speaking of stress, pasted text also highlights how important it is to manage stress for, overall well-being. They specifically mention meditation and breathing exercises.
That goes back to what we were talking about with cortisol, right? That stress hormone, and how chronic stress can really, really mess with our hormonal balance.
It's all connected. I think it's safe to say that our friend pasted text, despite their sometimes unconventional delivery, has some valuable insights.
Definitely. Now let's shift gears a bit and explore the psychological side of effortless weight loss. James Clear, in his blog post about simple living, talks about how we can design our environment to basically support our weight loss goals.
He calls them environmental hacks, these little tweaks we can make to our surroundings to kind of nudge us towards healthier choices without us even realizing it.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Well, he brings up the smaller plate idea again, but he also suggests using dark green plates. The idea is that the color green might subconsciously prime us to eat more vegetables.
Oh, wow. Like a little mind trick to boost our veggie intake. I love that.
Clear also emphasizes the importance of reframing our relationship with food. Instead of seeing it as the enemy, something we constantly need to restrict, he suggests adopting this 80-20 approach.
Oh, so focusing on healthy choices 80% of the time, and then allowing ourselves some guilt-free indulgences that other 20%. That sounds a lot more sustainable than trying to be perfect all the time.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance that feels good and allows you to enjoy life without feeling deprived.
That makes sense. What else does he have to say about a healthier relationship with food?
He emphasizes enjoying your food, savoring the flavors, and appreciating the whole experience of eating. When we approach our meals with that sense of pleasure and gratitude, we're less likely to overeat or feel restricted.
That's such an important point. It's not about punishing ourselves or feeling guilty about what we eat. It's about finding joy in it.
Right, exactly. And speaking of finding joy, let's talk about the perspective from Lavish Wellness and Aesthetics, that wellness clinic we mentioned earlier.
They seem to have a more holistic approach to weight loss, don't they? Focusing not just on the physical, but also the emotional and the mental aspects.
They really stress the importance of setting realistic goals and seeking support. So often we set ourselves up for failure with these unrealistic expectations, or we try to go it alone without any accountability.
They also emphasize addressing any underlying health issues that might be contributing to weight gain. Makes a lot of sense. It's not always as simple as calories in, calories out.
Exactly. It's about looking at the whole picture and addressing all of the factors that can impact our weight and well-being.
So it's not just about, shrinking our bodies. It's about optimizing our health and feeling our best from the inside out.
Precisely. Creating a sustainable lifestyle that supports both our physical and mental health.
Wow, we've covered so much in this deep dive. It's amazing all the different angles there are to approach this topic.
We've explored the science of hormones, the power of habit formation, the psychology of our relationship with food, the importance of seeking support and addressing any underlying health issues.
It's incredible how all these pieces fit together to create this more holistic picture of effortless weight loss.
And yet, it all comes back to that initial question, doesn't it? Can weight loss truly feel effortless? As we head into the final part of our deep dive, I think that's something really worth reflecting on.
Stay tuned as we wrap up this exploration of effortless weight loss, and we'll uncover those final insights to help you on your journey. All right, welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into effortless weight loss. I feel like we've uncovered so much already. It's like a treasure trove of strategies, from hormones to habits to the power of our environment.
It has been quite a journey, hasn't it? And you know what? Amidst all the different perspectives, there's this common thread that runs through it all.
Yeah, you're right. It's like we keep circling around this idea of making peace with our bodies, finding a way to nourish ourselves that feels good and sustainable.
Exactly. It's not about forcing ourselves into a mold or battling our natural inclinations. It's about working with our bodies, not against them.
Which reminds me of something Dr. Ekberg said that really stuck with me. It was about the difference between a diet and a lifestyle change. It's such a crucial distinction.
Absolutely. Diets often feel so restrictive and temporary. It's like we're setting ourselves up for that cycle of, yo-yoing and ultimately a sense of failure. But a lifestyle change, that's about making these gradual shifts in our habits and our choices that we can actually maintain for the long haul.
And it's those small, consistent changes that can lead to those big results over time.
It's like compound interest. Each healthy choice you make, it's like a small investment in your future well-being. Over time, those investments add up, and they create a wealth of health and vitality.
I love that. It shifts the focus away from those quick fixes and that instant gratification. And it really emphasizes the power of building those sustainable habits.
Exactly. It's about finding a way of eating and living that feels good right now, but also supports your long-term health and happiness.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with this question. If effortless weight loss is about listening to our body's innate wisdom, how do we actually get better at tuning into those signals?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think it goes beyond just recognizing those physical hunger cues. It's about cultivating a sense of mindfulness and awareness in all aspects of our lives.
So paying attention to how different foods make us feel, noticing our energy levels, even being more in tune with our emotional state.
Exactly. It's about becoming more present in our bodies, learning to really decipher those subtle messages they're constantly sending us. It's about cultivating that deep sense of self-awareness.
It sounds almost like a form of meditation, a practice of like turning inward and really, really listening to what our body's trying to tell us.
And by honoring those messages, we can start making choices that truly nourish us, choices that support our physical, emotional, even spiritual well-being.
It's a beautiful vision, isn't it? This idea of living in harmony with our bodies and finding a way of eating that feels effortless and joyful.
It's not about striving for perfection or adhering to, these rigid rules. It's about finding what works for you, listening to your own body's wisdom and making choices that support your own unique needs and preferences.
Well said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into effortless weight loss. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and feel inspired to embark on your own journey of sustainable well-being. Remember, it's not about reaching a destination, it's about enjoying the journey.
Every step you take towards a healthier, happier you is a victory. So keep exploring, keep listening to your body, and keep diving deep.